Where are we? Can't see anything. Are the Kallenbachs here? Oh, did you bring the coffee? Where's the coffee?
Oh, I surely did. Well, I better go find it.
So how you doing? Good to see you again.
Hello, sweethearts. Hello, sweethearts. Hello, sweethearts.
My
Did
friend
you bring a guest?
Senator Green.
Doctor, nice to meet you.
Hi, how do you do?
Hi,
Hello, sweetheart.
yeah, do I get a hug?
No, honey, I can't do anything good. Hello, hello.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, David.
Yes.
What a pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
Good morning, Doctor.
Yes, indeed. Hi. Hi. Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning, sweetheart. I haven't seen you in a while. Uh-huh. Oh.
Good morning.
Oh. There's walls here and everything.
We saw you in Austin last week.
Oh, how wonderful. Yes. I love being there. That was a wonderful group. Yes, indeed. Uh-huh.
Good morning.
Yes. Hi. Hi. Hello, hello. Hello, sweetheart. Yeah, hello.
Flew across country just to do this.
Thank you. Hey, there you go.
Oh, so
there you go.
wonderful to see you.
Hi.
See you.
Look at the little people here, the big people. The little ones and the big ones. Hi. Hi. That's a comfortable jacket. Hey. Hi. Hi. Yeah, well, we gotta hurry up and say hello to everybody, huh?
How you doing? My name's Buddy. Nice to meet you.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Well, hello.
Yeah, if you aren't careful, they knock you over. They knock you over.
David, this is my boss's mother, Arlene. Arlene, you were the president of a hospital?
Yes.
She was the president of a hospital.
Oh, there's a job for you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you for putting into language experiences that have not been able to be put into words. Thank you for that.
There we are. Hi. The old regulars, the favorites, huh? Yeah.
Good morning, Dr.
Hi.
Bach. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, good. Hi.
Hi there, Sean.
Hi.
Wife Deborah.
Hello, sweethearts. Hey, hi. Hello.
Hi. Thanks from all of us for today.
Good morning. God bless you.
Nice to see you again.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
God bless you.
Good to see you again.
Well, we'll go around this way.
Yeah, that'd be easy.
Okay, hi. Here's one. There's a big guy. One of the big guys. Hi. Don't argue with the big
How are
guys.
you, Doug?
He's another big guy. Don't argue with the big guys. Hi. Hello, 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 hello. Uh-huh. Hi. Hi, hi. Very good.
Have to go up.
Hi, hi, hi. Glad to see you again. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Hawkins. How
Hi.
are you? Good to see you again. Good to see you again.
Oh, I like it.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hello.
I'm gonna catapult right past all these people here. Hi, sweetheart. Yeah. The music stopped, so it must be time to start. God is prompt, so we try to be prompt. It's 9 o'clock. God's here, so it's good to see you all again. Last week we were in Austin. Some of the people from Austin are here today. Say hello to them. We start out, we have an interpreter here also. I can't hear what she's saying, but she knows. At the rate my hearing is going, I'll be needing her soon. So I'm buttering her up. I say what more than any other word in the language. What? What? Now I have this African parrot that makes my what's even worse. What? She said Merry Christmas this morning, so that's her message to the group. We've been following the advance of her consciousness, you know, and she's learning all kinds of language. And now she says, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. When Jesus returns, she'd be all ready for us. So, as you know, we always start out with the end of the lecture first and work back to the beginning. The realization. There's only a few things you really need to know. There's only a couple of things. If you know just a few things very well, that's all you need. To merely hear them already begins the process. Just before the world disappears altogether, you notice that everything is happening spontaneously. The most important thing to know is that everything is happening in and of its own. Nothing is being caused by anything. All phenomena are the automatic consequence of the field. The field is one of infinite, invisible, omnipotent power, all-encompassing, like a giant electromagnetic field. No beginning, no ending, either spatially or in time. Forever and always present. This field is infinitely powerful. The human mind cannot conceive of the infinite except as a concept. its presence is exquisitely gentle and exquisitely powerful. The field is so powerful that potentiality is activated by the field to become an actuality. All things happen by virtue of the infinite power of the field. What the world considers evolution is the witnessing of creation, which is continuous. The unmanifest, beyond the linear, becomes manifest by divine providence as the totality of creation, and this happens effortlessly. Within the field, then, potentiality is actualized by intention. Therefore, each thing comes forth, manifesting its karmic inheritance. You might say its karma is its innate potential. And when conditions are appropriate, then the potentiality becomes an actuality in and of itself, as a consequence of the infinite power of the field. The field is so powerful that if you continuously hold a thought, it will become a happening. Yeah. Otherwise, no one will become enlightened. Therefore, one's intention is all-powerful. See, the ego is very clever, and as the potentiality begins to manifest, it takes credit for it. Person goes and takes a pair of scissors and cuts the stem to an apple, and he thinks he made the apple drop to the ground. That's how all things are happening, like gravity. There's no inner separate personal self making anything happen. It holds an intention, and now, when the conditions are appropriate, the potential manifests. I used to drive over Mingus Mountain 3 times a week. As you drive around a certain curve, there was nothing, no flowers there. All of a sudden, in the late spring, what do they call those plants that grow up like that within a couple of months? Huh? Century plant, okay. Here is this, first from nothing, within a couple of months was this incredible century plant, taller than I am, stunningly beautiful. Before there wasn't anything there. So we asked with kinesiology, how long had the seed been in the ground that grew into that century plant? And the answer was 150 years. The seed was laying in the dirt 150 years. And then, its karmic potential being there, when the local conditions were appropriate, just the right moisture, the right sequence of barometric pressure, temperature, sunshine, when all was just right, it shone forth. Oof. To know the one thing, all is happening in and of its own by divine ordination, does the unmanifest become manifest in and of itself because of the infinite power of the field of divinity and for no other reason. That's all you need to know. What happens is that the mind, in 1/10,000th of a second, quickly claims that it was the author of the action. See what it did? If you don't keep it under control, it might do it again. Was there a decider there who decided to do that? That's a very hard illusion to break. The difference between being enlightened and not enlightened is merely to see that. If you're strictly, completely, and radically honest, radically, beyond the capacity of most people, to be honest, much less radically honest. To be radically honest means to somehow be able to beat that 1/10,000th of a second, to completely surrender that all things happen by divine providence, by the will of God, and for no other reason. The only opponent to that understanding is the ego. And the ego's job is to claim to be God. And it does it well. It claims that it is the originator. You see, it will claim that it was the originator of that happening. The ego is a liar. To understand the liar, then, frees you from its coils. So, one thing we do is try to understand the ego in ways that have not really been discovered or described before. And that's our contribution, was discovering of the usefulness of kinesiology. Now, we do not lecture on kinesiology, and I don't even believe in it. You can't believe in kinesiology because it calibrates to 600, which is the line between the linear and the nonlinear. Most of the time, I don't believe it either. See, you don't have to believe it, but you just use it like you do a screwdriver or pliers. It's a very practical tool. But with kinesiology, we've been able to discern really, in libraries of encyclopedias of information and knowledge, an incredible amount of information to which mankind has never had access. Therefore, I have a certain reverence for the gift, because in witnessing kinesiology, it was taught by Dr. John Diamond. It was thought by the people who still were dominated by duality to be a local phenomenon. But in this lifetime, there had already been what the world would call advanced states. And therefore, I didn't live in the same limitation. And when I saw kinesiology, what I saw was the response of an infinite field of power. The infinite field of power was then registering in the person's consciousness and traveling down through the acupuncture system. And the basic premise of this infinite field is that it instantly recognizes truth. The infinite field of consciousness registers all that ever happens or has happened anywhere in time. Every thought, every feeling, every movement, every action is recorded forever. There is no such thing as privacy. you haven't got any privacy at all, and you never did. Everything radiates out an energy. This can be read thousands of years later. Therefore, the discovery was so mind-boggling that I walked around for 5 years wondering what to do with it. You have access to all the information that exists now or ever within 1 second. It takes that long to discover any secret in the universe. So you can see why I walked around for 5 years thinking what to do with this. First of all, it's best not to tell anybody. Yes. So it is an incredible gift. It's an incredible gift. Mankind has suffered untold agonies for centuries and centuries for lack of the knowledge of the difference between truth and falsehood. To not know the difference between truth and falsehood condemns mankind to endless wars, poverty, savageries, sickness, agony, suffering, and death. The affliction, then, has been one of ignorance. All the great avatars, Buddha, Christ, Krishna, all say, there is only one sin, only one problem, and that is ignorance. Ignorance. But man had no way of discerning truth and falsehood except the words of the great spiritual teachers. The words of the great spiritual teachers. Now we have at hand a gift which to me represents the consequence of the advance of human consciousness over time, which we'll get into during the lecture. It was in the late 1980s that the consciousness level of mankind went from 190, which is below integrity and truth, which is at 200, and it jumped to 205. Therefore, mankind throughout the centuries has been dominated collectively by a consciousness that was below truth, non-integrous. So we see a civilization in history which grew with an overall collective consciousness level of 190. Suddenly in the late 1980s, around 87, at about the time of the harmonic concordance, but not caused by it, it jumped to 205. People speak of the second coming of Christ, and they think it's going to be somebody who suddenly gets born in Brooklyn and appears on television. That's a rather naive understanding. The Christ, then, is a conscious awareness. Therefore, when the consciousness level of mankind went over 200, that, to me, was the return of the consciousness of the Christ, which now dominates mankind. The collective level again went up last November from 205 to 207. Therefore, we now live in a different world, and as you can see by the daily newspaper, truth often brings, people think truth is going to bring peace. People call themselves spiritual, picture that it's all flowers and hymns and saintly smiles. Christ said, I came with a sword of truth, right? Because when consciousness level is 190, you have a world in which slipping you a few bucks, you can even buy the UN. $42 billion can buy you the UN Security Council. What happens when consciousness level reaches 205? That's no longer okay. When it reaches 207, it's very much not okay. Very much not okay. It used to be success was fame, fortune, money, wealth, fancy cars, Cadillacs, a yacht. And Now the new success is integrity. Anybody can have those things. Back east where I lived, everybody had them. Everybody was a multimillionaire. The clubs I belonged to, everybody was a millionaire. Everybody had a yacht. Everybody had 6 Cadillacs and servants. Didn't mean a thing. Most of them inherited it. That's the best way to do it, folks. No, I wouldn't say that, because if you inherit it, it really isn't yours. It's really not what you did, and you're always sort of apologetic for it. So you play polo or something, you know. Go to the right schools and all. No, 207 then, there's quite a push for integrity. So what you see is unrest in society, contention, conflict, social discord, because the energies below 200 now are in a world which calibrates at 207. So pure rhetoric alone will not cut the ice anymore. It's got to be backed up by some facts. Okay. A new paradigm then of social acceptance, integrity. I could have saved Martha trip to jail easy. Martha, go to a 12-step meeting. 10th step is when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. All she had to do is say, well, look, if your stockbroker says thinking that something's bottoming out, wouldn't you sell it? Well, I would too. So I'd fine her, $50,000 and end the story. Big deal. So, but no, she's really in prison for lack of integrity. She was convicted of lack of integrity. When you lie to a federal jury, that's why she's in jail. Not for money, not for wealth, not for fame. You see, at 207, you go to prison for lack of integrity. Wow, it's a new paradigm. In the old days, you could have bought off everybody and she wouldn't be here, but now it's not so easy to buy everybody off. So you see now a strange interface between the old culture at 190 and then interacting with the culture at 205 and 207, right? So it's like all right, so the advance of truth doesn't necessarily bring tranquil waters. In fact, it may disturb things for a period of time. And people who have gotten involved in intense spiritual work, before they get there, they think it's going to be hearts and flowers and we're all going to sing hymns and dance around the maypole and have peace marches, peace vigils, and that will bring about peace. No, you find that it's quite the contrary, that you now have a new paradigm, and reflected in this new paradigm is the downside of the old, and so you have a conflict going on. We'll have peace, all right, but it may take a few thousand years, that's all. No point to being impatient. To merely know that all things are happening in and of their own with no external cause, because the difficulty in a group such as is here today is a group like this is stuck in the Newtonian paradigm of reality. The Newtonian paradigm is that there is a this causing a that. It's dualistic. It's also the very source of thinking that there is a separate individual I, a separate personal I. There's no separate personal I talking here. Go on. The field, the presence, because of the audience, speaks back to itself as it speaks. And I don't have anything to do with it. Nothing to do with what is being said, nothing. That happened many years ago, when the personal self, the infinite presence is so powerful that it really extinguishes anything that is not itself. And the personal self disappeared, and the mind became silent. The mind right now is still silent. If I listen to the mind, it says nothing at all. Neither does yours, but you think it does. And that's the difference. So we'll start out where to make that jump, you see, and then we'll go back to the lecture. The mind thinks there's a you, and this you is causing this sequence of events. Sequential causality. I saw through that in theology class. I went to a Jesuit university. The arguments for the presence of God is that there must be a great big capital A back here, which in itself is fallacious. It's an idiotic thing. And at the time I was an atheist, and it's a stupid remark. Anyway, a sequence arises from that which is not of the sequence, not of the sequence, not of the sequence, right? So the average person thinks there is a personal me, and it is causing these thoughts or actions in a chain reaction. Causality is this causing a that. Therefore, there must be an entity causing all that. That's a presumption. The mind can't understand infinity, so it presumes that in a sequence of events there would be a prime cause of God. God must have a prime cause or something. That which always has been obviously needs no cause, beyond cause. This is where the thoughts are, and this is where there is a teaching, a mistranslation of the teaching of the Buddha, that the infinite reality, enlightenment, is seeing between two thoughts, in the seeming nothingness and void. Now, many of us spent years and years cross-legged, breathing in strange places, wearing sandals, incense, the whole, looking for the space between A, B, and C. Did anybody here ever find it? No. If somebody says yes someday, you know he's a liar, because it cannot be found between the thoughts. That's a mistranslation of the Buddha. But endless lifetimes have been spent. Nico and I are experts at it. We spent lifetimes as Hinayana monks, the pathway of negation, not this, not that. Anyway, you cannot catch the infinite space between thoughts, because the mind is what's looking for the space between two thoughts, and the mind cannot catch something that happens in less than 1/10,000th of a second. The mind is limited to 1/10,000th of a second. So the mind is unable, what's today's lecture's name? Observing and witnessing. The mind, as we will see later, can't move fast enough to catch it between two thoughts. It's got to be faster than 1/10,000th of a second to do it. And it can't. The mind cannot move faster than 1/10,000th of a second. In fact, when you put, a rabbit runs across the road, you put the brake on. If you're quick and honest, you'll see that it happened, and then the personal self congratulates itself that I stepped on the brake. No, it already braked, and then the I, in 1/10,000th of a second, claims authorship. That's the difference between enlightenment and non-enlightenment. It's in that 1/10,000th of a second. I had the good fortune when I was very young that I caught the ego doing that. I caught it. It had already saved the rabbit's life and braked, and then I caught the ego. I caught it claiming credit, but I knew it had already happened. At the moment it said, the phenomena had already occurred. So that was fortuitous. At that young age, I didn't understand the implication of that. All right, so if you cannot find the infinite reality between the thoughts, then where is the infinite reality? And here's where it is here. Beneath all the thinkingness is silence, void, silence. The source of thinkingness, then, is an infinite silence and infinite peace. And if you go in there, it's hard to lecture. So I'm not going to go in there now. Because you feel weak and you begin to weep and you want to leave the world as soon as you can. Stay out of there. So anyway, it's the infinite silent field out of which your consciousness and your thinkingness is arising. So your thoughts are not arising this way. Each one is being individually created sequentially. See there? Oops. Each one is being independently, sequentially. So instead of like billiard balls, thoughts are really like flying fish. I remember World War II, we were in the something or other sea, and I don't remember what sea it was. Anyway, flying fish are flying out and landing on the deck. So a flying fish arises here, all of a sudden over here another flying fish comes up, over here another one comes up. Each one is coming up separately, individually, of its own nature. Spontaneously emerging of its own nature. Because its nature, as a flying fish, is to do that. Nobody is forcing it to do it. Nobody is causing it to do it. The nature of the flying fish is it gets a kick out of doing that. Now, now you'll see how sick and weird the human mind is, because this fish comes up here, this fish comes up here, this fish comes up here, and some idiot who's always a professor at some university, they're always a professor, will tell you that the fish are triangulating. There's always this incredible mathematics, you got to go through all the formulas and crap. And it demonstrates the triangulation of fish. That's what your mind does. So your mind is the idiot scientist, the idiot professor. So standing in your way is not ignorance. No, it's the idiot professor. The fish doesn't. The fish just is what it is. See? Each one of us just is what we are. We're not caused by anything at all. There's no cause for anything. Creation is the unfolding of the unmanifest becoming manifest, the infinite potentiality becoming manifest. This is by virtue of the incredible power of the field. That explains, and now we understand how karma works, see? Therefore, each one of us, our karmic inheritance, which is sort of like a software program, we're all born with a software program, see? The brain is your hardware. It's genetically engineered. You've got nothing to do with that. Yeah, but you're born with consciousness. So you're born with this software programming, software. That's your karmic inheritance. That defines who you are. Your calibrated level, everybody has a calibrated level of consciousness at the moment they're born. The moment you're born, you already have a calibratable level of consciousness. Without karma, how would you explain such a phenomena? This now plays. So the hardware of the brain plays any software you put on it. So the karma is your software, The karmic inheritance, all the decisions made through great eons of time. Now, because of the software, you might say, you might say you're like an iron filing, see? Every spiritual decision then tends to change the configuration. Let's say you got a little karmic body, it looks like caramel taffy or something. All the decisions you've made have positioned it to be the way it is. Now, in an infinite power, in an infinite field, like an electromagnetic field, this little iron filing is positioned as a consequence of the power of the field. The field is so infinitely powerful that as a little iron filing, you automatically go to where you fit in the field. As a consequence of that which you are, in the power of the field determines all phenomena. When and where you're born, how long you live. And we discovered also through karmic research, through kinesiologic research, you have a calibrated level of consciousness at birth. People are born and calibrated at 40, 60, 80, 200, 300, 400. Also, at the moment of birth, the time of death is already preset. Huh. Is that fatalism? No. You can call it whatever you like. The fact is, you enter already with a certain level of potential, consciousness potential, and your exit is already prearranged. So you don't have to worry about dying, it's all handled. You know, the scary thing about this world is not, the scary thing is how do you get out of here? They keep closing all the doors, curing all these illnesses, safety features. I mean, you can't get out of this place. We're trapped. How are you going to get out of this place, you know? Getting here is easy. Getting out of here, how are you going to get out? Okay. You have to get an exit permit from the government. So that's not predestination, which is something else altogether. But your time is limited, and the time of leaving is already preset. It's sort of like getting a, what do you call a computer disc now with a movie on them? DVD? What do you call them? DVD, yes, all right. When you buy a DVD, the end of the story is already in the tape, or the disc, what do you call the thing? Yeah. The end of the story is already there. The fact that it hasn't unrolled yet doesn't mean it's not there. So it's like you're born with this computer disc CDD thing in your head. It's karmic CDB? What is it?
DVD.
Huh? DVD. You're born with a karmic DVD. However, you can play it on your computer and you can change the story as it goes. But when the end of the disc arrives, that's the end of the disc, folks. And if you listen to what we say in the lectures, you will be very, very happy about it. You can go now. You go. Thank you, Lord. It's okay to leave. You know, I had a huge psychiatric practice for many years, and even after retirement, they didn't have anybody to go to the nursing homes and various places, so in the county I used to do that. 30,000 miles a year running around to nursing homes and all. Every nursing home always has an old crone strapped in a wheelchair. She's got all these tubes, pipes, hanging down there. All these devices, machines, computerized stuff. And she's always going, help, 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 help. I say, doctor, can't you do something? She keeps, help, 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 help. I know what she wants, but it's illegal. help me get out of here. Help me get out of here. They won't let me out of here. You cannot leave this world without Medicare permission. Medicare rigs. It's not permissible to pull all these tubes and things out, and that's what she wants. She keeps trying to pull the tube out, you know, because she wants to leave. So what do? They strap her arm down. Literally. Tie down their arms so you can't croak. And get the hell out of here. Before things get worse. All right, so you come in with this karmic program, you know, your software. You've got already a calibratable level of consciousness at the moment of birth. The level of consciousness will determine what kinds of choices and options you will have to make decisions about. Also, everyone is born under the most karmically optimal conditions for their evolution and growth. That was a major discovery. Let's see if that's a fact. Everybody knows Susan, but I want to make sure everybody knows Susan. Without whom we wouldn't know anything. Okay, so the moment of, what did we ask? The moment of death is already preset?
Right. No, it was, where were we? The karmic propensity of one's self.
Born into the most optimistic.
Oh, yes. The circumstances of your birth are perfectly aligned with your karmic potential to potentiate your evolution and growth. We have permission to ask that, O Lord. And the answer to that is true. Resist. True. That gets rid of self-pity, folks. Poor me. The competition for being a victim in the poor me is so severe in society. I mean, if you get to be more awful and pathetic than somebody else, they're so full of envy and hatred. They just hate you. But my condition is worse than your condition. Being the martyr, the victim of injustice, is the keynote to American society today. All right, so realizing that whatever the circumstances of your birth were, hardship, illnesses, death of parents, sexual predation, anything, is part of one's karmic inheritance. Karma has its upside. It also has the necessity for the undoing of things, So if we accept the less pleasant things about our life and get that it's an undoing, and therefore to be grateful for it. Somehow, when you reach a certain level of consciousness, then you remember what the events were in previous life, in a prior life, what the world would call a prior life. It's all one life, but prior incarnation. That which is infinite in dimension can hardly have a beginning and an ending. So your consciousness has always been. The field out of which your consciousness arises has always been. And because it has always been, it will always be. Death is not a possibility. Too bad. That's the people that dashes your final hopes, huh? No, you have to accept responsibility. Death is just, that's the long for cop-out. No, you can't cop out with physical death. And if you didn't undo it all, you come back again until you undo it all. So, therefore, the vicissitudes of life we can look at from wisdom and say, I don't know what it's serving right now, but obviously it is serving something, either individually or collectively, because people also have collective karma, yeah? Collective karma. 10,000 people kill 50,000 innocent civilians. Now, how do you undo that? How do the Vikings undo butchering tens of thousands of innocent civilians, little babies in their crib? How do you undo that? If you want to get to heaven, you're going to have to undo it. So you need an opportunity to undo it. So karma prepares the infinite, the possibility. Therefore, we all inherit now by virtue of this life. Therefore is a gift, because through this life, we can undo that which was negative and a deterrent, and we can align ourselves with that which is integrous. The only difficulty is that the world has never known truth from falsehood and what is integrous. That's difficult, isn't it? You have to live a life without a compass. You only have the say-so of tradition and religion. You know, traditional religion told you which way is truth. So we need the whatchamacallit, number one or number uno. What do you call that thing? Slide. 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 Ta-dum! This has become relatively well known. The map of consciousness. These are the levels of man throughout all of time, as recorded throughout all of time. Different wording and different cultures, but they always boil down to exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And we call these the levels of consciousness. You can calibrate their relative energy. And in doing this, the numbers became so large, I had to switch to logarithmic. So each of these numbers are 10 to that power. This is 10 times 10 times 10, 250 times. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. You do that 250 times. You see that's a pretty big number, so it wouldn't fit on the blackboard. So we went to logarithm. We discovered that anything that ever existed now or ever, it can be calibrated on a scale of 1 to 1,000. We said, what's the highest consciousness that's ever walked this world? And we got the great avatars, Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Zoroaster, is the infinite, that is the top potential. The reasons for it are not important, but frankly it's because of the nature of protoplasm and the central nervous system can only handle up to power. See, because you're talking logarithmically now, as frequencies, energies go up, the frequency gets higher and higher. The human nervous system, frankly, has great difficulty handling anything over maybe 750. From 750 up, you really should be in a different dimension. From 1 to 1,000, we discovered then that we could calibrate the consciousness level of anything and everything now or ever. And we discovered, as I said, the kinesiologic test. When I saw Diamond do it, I realized it was consciousness is like a giant electrostatic field. Remember on the electrostatic speakers, it was a membrane, electrostatically charged membrane. Now, when you bring a charge up to it, it reacts with an equal and opposite reaction. If you bring up, those of you who know physics will laugh at this. Let's say we bring up 32 protons and 32 neutrons, or what do you call them, negatrons. Electrons and protons, whatever they are, you know, it's like, whatever the field holds, an equal and opposite reaction shows up. So, in the presence of truth then, consciousness recognizes the difference between truth and falsehood, and it recognizes the electrostatic charge, you might say. The higher truth goes up, the higher it's and more powerful its charge. So when we calibrate something, I hold it silently in mind. People say, you're suggesting, don't forget kinesiology has been examined, you know, for decades by thousands of people. So every argument you can think of has already been looked at by thousands of people. I don't influence what she's thinking because I don't tell her what I'm thinking. We only verbalize it when we have an audience. if I want to know something, I don't want to spend the time and energy talking about it. Once in a while, she'll say, "What was that?" What was that? Okay. There's one I haven't had a chance to ask yet. Okay. I have permission to ask that. Okay. What I'm thinking calibrates over 200 resist, 300, 250, 260. What I'm holding in mind is a phenomenon, calibrates over 250, 260. Telepathy, we never did calibrate telepathy. It says 250. So obviously she didn't know what I was thinking because I've had it on my disk for a couple months. Someday I'll ask telepathy. We never did ask it. A lot of people have experienced it on various levels. People who go for silent weekends very often become very adept at it. I went on I think it was only a 4 or 5 days silent retreat, and within 24 hours, everybody was telepathic. You wouldn't even think butter. You would sit down and somebody would just hand you butter like they knew it. Some of our staff have recently been in silent weekends, and they say it's sort of magical and mystical. So you discover that telepathic capacity. It's not that you're consciously thinking a thing, but what you're holding in mind, even non-verbally, is somehow knowable by other people. So anyway, 250, that's interesting. So this is the way we do it. I don't want to influence her in any way. She's so sophisticated and skilled at this over the years that it doesn't influence her, but just to make sure. I had no idea what was going to come up about telepathy myself. All right, so we discovered you can calibrate everything on a scale of consciousness that goes from 1 to 1,000. The critical level, and I forgot my pointer today. Anyway, I always take it where I don't need it and forget it where I need it. We found that everything that is true calibrates 200 and up, and below 200. So then we, because having been a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, etc., we naturally calibrated these things according to the classical levels of human consciousness. Each level then has its own way of understanding or perceiving God, including atheists. Atheists can be predicted. Their view of themselves, person's opinion of myself. We give this level a name that's common and familiar, so everybody knows what grief is, everybody knows what shame is. Here we have the emotion that goes with it. Emotion. Here you see everybody's headlines, every night's news broadcast. You can calibrate everything that happens on the news. Yeah? And this is the process going on in consciousness on the far right. This plus knowing how to do kinesiology can give you an answer to anything. Right now, mankind, in a way, has the most incredible gift it's ever received. First of all, the revelation of the great teachers in history. But then, the gift of how to tell truth from falsehood. This world, and this is hard to get, does not know truth from falsehood. This world does not know truth from falsehood, nor does it have any test or capacity to differentiate the two. Convincingness has nothing to do with it. The most convincing, persuasive politicians in history have led mankind to death by the tens of millions in my lifetime. In my lifetime, tens of millions died as a result of the oratorical excellence of Adolf Hitler, Stalin, Milosevic. The fallacy of Marxism, etc. The human mind, so by the tens of millions, people salute and worship falsehood. Salute and worship leaders who calibrate at 50. Give up their lives for leaders who calibrate at 50. Worse than Machine Gun Kelly. Worse than Machine Gun Kelly. Lower than Machine Gun Kelly. And people give up their lives for them. Donate all their property, sacrifice their children, send their sons off to war, to fight for illusion. All right. So really, this is one of the greatest gifts mankind has ever really received. You know, it's only dawned on me more and more recently what an incredible. It's probably the most valuable gift we own right now. Just think what you could do if you could know truth from falsehood about anything, anytime. How would it make your life different, huh? The only requirement to get an honest answer is that you have to yourself be aligned and committed to integrity and truth. That eliminates 85% of the world's population. Therefore, what we're talking about today is accessible to only 15% of the world's population. It calibrates over 200. If the purpose of asking the question is personal selfishness, then the answer is unreliable. When you ask for something, people say, "Can I use kinesiology about my business?" Yes, so long as you ask only in the name of the highest good. Anything in reference to your personal life, you can say, it is in the highest good, meaning for the world, for society, for your employees and their families, you know, for the good and welfare. After all, everyone who has any kind of money is now the steward of that money. So you now have like a moral responsibility. The minute you have money, you have in a way a certain moral responsibility to be a responsible steward for that money. The taxpayers have worked hard for that money. So we expect our public officials to be considerate of that we've all busted our chops for that money. Okay. So if the intention of the question is integrous and you yourself calibrate over 200, then the reliability should be excellent, and it's like riding a bicycle, you just need a little experience with it. So you can say, it's in the name of the highest good that my company buy this other little corporation, you know, or that we expand, we triple the size of our restaurant. The way to go broke in the restaurant world is to be very successful and then double the size of the restaurant. You ever see a little thriving Chinese restaurant, you know, there's steam all over, or Italian restaurant, you know, you can see the chef there with the spaghetti, and there's a waiting line out there, so they're going to double and triple it. Okay, so they close for 6 weeks, reopen, and it goes bankrupt. In Sedona, it happens all the time. I don't know, 15, 20 of them I can think of. The energy of it has changed. So if I were him, I would say, is it in the name of the highest good that I double the size of this restaurant? And you're probably going to know. Why? Because it's the ambiance that's pulling the people. And if you double it and make it luxurious, you've lost what they're there for. You know, I can remember in the Gaslight District, you know, a very, very popular tavern, you know, very popular. Everybody goes there. And it's very cool and hip, you know, to hang out there near the gas works. So somebody buys it and decides they're going to clean it up. They close the place for 6 weeks, clean it all up, and now nobody goes there. Because the energy is all there. I remember the Electric Circus back east in New York. The Electric Circus was one of the first psychedelic nightclubs. And rock music, it was very avant-garde. And the cool and the hip went there. And there was a waiting line outside. So they closed it, and of course, after a couple of years, Andy Warhol, the whole group used to hang out there. So they closed it and expanded it. And what had been really sort of funky was now like a white alabaster and curved walls, really weird. And people went back there, the acoustics were horrible because it bounced off these curved walls, and it went flat broke. Nobody went there anymore. But when it was all jammed up and funky looking, and it was where everybody went, you know. So the thing to do then is you can pose anything that you would consider personal, but pose it in a way that is not just like you're going to vote. The way to vote is not, I'm always amazed when I hear people come on television and say, well, they're going to vote for so-and-so because he's going to vote for higher wages for truck drivers. You know, the guy's a truck driver. I never hear anybody say, I'm going to vote for so-and-so because I think it's the best for the country. Yeah, you'd say, which would serve the best interest of mankind or the country instead of just me? I mean, it seems to me you would vote for whoever you think is going to be the best for the country. And last night on TV, they were saying, you know, the guy makes pickles and he's going to vote for whoever pays more to pickle makers and packers or something. I mean, it's so completely self-interested. I don't believe this, that people think in such a petty way. You know, only me, me, me. But that's the ego, egocentricity. And it looks to gain. You see, it's always looking, it's demanding and it looks to gain. And, all right, so that's, we could spend a whole lecture on this, and we used to spend a whole lecture on just going over the scale of consciousness and the incredible implications. In the United States of America, well, let's go to the next slide. We'll get there. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. Well, we'll go to that after a while. In the world, then, 15% of the world's population calibrates over 200. 15%. If you drop yourself off in the world with a parachute, the chances are 85% that the people around you will be non-integrous. As you'll see later, you're safer with Coco, the gorilla, than you are. In the United States now, only 49% of the people calibrate below 200. In the United States, which calibrates overall at 421, 51% of the people calibrate over 200 and are integrous. So that's a very interesting development. We, on the scale of consciousness, we went up to 600 because there are only a half a dozen people on the planet at any time, at this time, that calibrate over 600. So it's not too useful. We do use it in calibrating spiritual teachers throughout history. They're the only ones that go over 600. Nisargadatta Maharaj, various people like that, up to 1,000. So up to 600 is really all that. At 600, the linear dissolves into the nonlinear. And 50% of the time, when people hit level 600, they leave. They leave just because. Because, well, anyway. They leave, and they just topple over. At that level, everything, you don't need anything. And everybody around you thinks you need something, but that's because they want to keep the body going, which is their problem. So they feed it and make sure you wash it and all kinds of strange things. So 600 and up, you're at the mercy of the people around you. Remember Ramana Maharshi went in, you know, Ramana Maharshi was just an ordinarily religious person, not unduly. And then in teenage, somewhere, I forget what age, he suddenly went into a different state and he fell down and died. He felt himself die. And he did die. And what survived was his consciousness, which remained silent for several years. But anyway, he was bitten by all kinds of insects, hadn't eaten in weeks, and some spiritually advanced people discovered his condition and saw to it that he ate and various things like that. And he did not even speak for 2 years, which is probably a good idea. These are the subjective states, so we calibrated them even though they're unusual. Historically, they're cited all the time. Teachers of enlightenment, avatars. Avatar is 985, and so these are the depictions of divinity, Brahma, And then archangels, who you got to be careful of. Archangels calibrate about 50,000 and up. And I've told the story of my own personal evolution. In the pits of hell, in the very bottom of hell, of absolute blackness and forever despair, a voice arose within that said, if there is a God, I ask him for help. And then silence and oblivion. And then the explosion of the wondrous state which revealed divinity as creation itself, not only its source, but as creation. And then the mind was like shocked, silent, in awe. It is still silent in awe. So you got to be careful of archangels, because I always pictured that it was a cruising archangel, see? And here's this idiot in the depths of hell, says, I ask him if there is a God. And he just glances over like, bang. Archangel, 50,000 and up. Well, you're talking about a logarithmic scale. You can imagine what 50,000 is. 10 times 10 times 10, 50,000 times. The power is so infinite. It's incomprehensible, and the power there is absolute. It's because of the absoluteness of the power that the unmanifest becomes manifest. The creation, which is merely a thought, then begins to unfold. Creation and evolution are one and the same thing, because the way creation presents itself seems sequential and evolutionary. What's evolutionary is the witness. What is sequential is the witnessing. Because you witness evolution, it seems to be sequential, you think evolution is sequential. It's a total oneness. It is neither sequential nor does it even occur within time, which is the programming which the mind projects on the phenomena. Okay, let's go away from that. The calibrated levels of consciousness, they're equivalent in microwatts. So as you see, below level consciousness level 200, the power is very limited. And then as your consciousness advances, your power becomes extraordinary. Okay, so we'll move on. That's the equivalent in microwatts. 85% of the world lives below consciousness level 200. So the great volume of humanity then is below level 200. From that you get that this is not a celestial realm. Yes, Walmart has faults. I agree. Government officials are human. Yeah, true. This is not a celestial realm where no such phenomena occur. All right. Why doesn't mankind self-destruct? It's because of the exponential power. The 15% have so much power that they totally counterbalance the 85%. The power, the 15%. So the kindly, loving, forgiving thoughts that you have, you're not conscious of it, but that is counterbalancing 980 people thinking of suicide, who suddenly at the last moment think, oh, maybe I'll give it another try. It's because of the presence of the infinite power of this field. So the spiritually committed person then, as a consequence of what they are, what they have become, counterbalances. Not what they do. People think, well, we'll have a peace parade. No, it's what you have become that is the power that counterbalances. What you do is relatively irrelevant. It's what you do is only a consequence of what you have become anyway. What you have become. So consciousness is like a light bulb. And the higher the level of consciousness, the more intense the light that it shines out. The more intense the light that it shines out. So what's the next one? Oh, we got there already. What happened to the evolution of consciousness over time? Which told you the time graph. I thought that was supposed to be next. We can live without it. Hmm? Oh, yes. Well, we got a little bit out of step. This was sent by a man named, it's easy to remember his name. An engineering student. This suddenly appeared in the mail, just as the previous graph. His name is Daniel Lyons. Isn't that an easy one to remember? I was thinking Daniel and the Lions Den, you know? This guy's name is Daniel Lyons, which is an adorable name. And he sent this to us. He's a mathematician, engineering student. And this is how much evolutionary time has elapsed. And you see the calibrated level of consciousness. It's only in the last flick of time that the calibrated level of consciousness is now up to 207 or so. It took this much evolutionary time, eons and eons, before it even moved off the carpet. You there? It barely got off the carpet after eons and eons of time. And now it's beginning to rise. People say, what do you think is the future of mankind? I said, all I can do is look at this graph. And from this graph, it looks like the consciousness of mankind is about to catapult ahead. In fact, learning kinesiology and how to tell truth from falsehood and all that we lecture about is a consequence of this. It's a consequence of the evolution of consciousness that we're now able to tell truth from falsehood and do so in a second about anything, anywhere in time or history. So long as the question is integrous and the people asking it are integrous. So here's where we are, and you could pretty much predict. The nature of consciousness itself is to evolve. So now we'll move to the next slide. Okay. Now we got to go backwards to evolutionary time. I got those backwards. Yeah, okay, that's fine. It's my fault because I changed all these charts yesterday, and Betty was trying to keep up with it. And how does this start here? Oh, yes. I have all kinds of pointers, and of course they're all home. So I'll be the pointer. The beginning of time, the beginning of the evolution of consciousness. How did consciousness evolve? This is critical to understand from a spiritual viewpoint. I'll tell you why. Because the ego, oh, look at that, right out of the mystical wonderment of the universe. How did I do that, huh? Intention manifests when the conditions are appropriate. You see, how he and I and the pointer and the audience are all one concordance. It's all one concordance, and of course this evolves when it's needed. This is crucial to understand. It's not academic at all. Self-hatred, guilt, all this stuff that comes about from egocentricity, hating yourself, shame, guilt, all that, is all a response to our perception, spiritually evolved people, our perception of the ego. Huh? Once you understand the evolution of the ego and its core, the essence of it, you stop feeling guilty about it. Now you can transcend it. The first signs of life, the unmanifest becomes manifest. So the universe evolves as a physicality. What is to become planet Earth is liquid lava, just energy flying around, which condenses itself because E equals mc squared to the potential for what do you call our galaxy, and then a little glob of it spins out of this hot gases and it condenses to lava, And over the eons, this then cools off enough to develop a crust on it that could sustain life. The interaction of consciousness, the interaction of the infinite power of the unmanifest, when it interacts with matter, is that it can spawn the emergence of life. So the source of life is consciousness. The source of life is non-physical. The source of life is the impact of consciousness on material when conditions are appropriate for this. That takes care of the mechanistic reductionist. Life does not arise from non-life. You see the imbecility of such a proposition. That's what's called mixing paradigms, mixing levels of abstraction, violating the Kantian categories. It's dumb. Life has completely different qualities from non-life. The mundane, mechanical, chemical cannot create something of a totally different level of being, existence, paradigm. It's a violation even within the Newtonian world of logic. What happened to, oh my God, I said something wrong, didn't I? Did I say somebody was feeling blue, or what happened here? Well, without that, folks, we had a good prognosis for a while, but I've got the transparency with me if the worst comes to worst. She can play with that. We'll get it back then. Oh, my. I mean, the computer world, I stay away from it as far as I can. It's a trap. Once it gets you by the ankle, you can't get loose from it. All right, so the evolution of life then, somewhere back in infinite time, the unmanifest as the power of consciousness itself, the infinite field of consciousness, interacted with material matter and activated the energy of life. All right. Now, life as it first appeared on this crusty planet did not emerge under favorable conditions. As you can see, if you landed on Mars, your survival would be dependent on getting energy. So life is born without the source of energy within it, it has to get it. So the first organism that arose was the bacteria. Bacteria calibrate as one. That moved on to protozoa, calibrate as three, then on into the insect world. But you can see the basic quality of life is that the organism has to go outside of itself for the energy. And our bad karma as humans is that we're not born green. We need chlorophyll instead of skin. When I get back there to the other side, I'm going to tell them too. Next time you do it, boss, how about making us green, okay? If you're green, you don't need a job, you don't need money, you don't have to go to work. You just walk around being who you are. Happily, your green energy creates energy. No, in the animal world, unfortunately, you have to get. So the core of the ego is self-interest. The core of the ego is get. And you see the appeal to the voters today is based on the same get. It's a solar plexus energy. Why? Because the organism is born, it does not have within itself the capacity to create energy. So the animal kingdom has to get it from somewhere. And the easiest way is to eat it. So we're born to eat. Without eating, you die. So if you were green, you wouldn't have to eat. You see what a break that would be? Let's all go together. Next time we'll come back green in a different place. Nobody has to go to work. You don't have to save up money. What good would money be? All right, so the core of the ego then, consciousness level below 200, is get, selfishness, self-centeredness. And that is, oh, goody. That is the core of your animal. Inside of you is an animal, and here's how the animal grew. Look at time. Remember that thing about time? How consciousness practically did nothing forever? And I just recently jumped up. So these ages are so old I can't pronounce all these words. Trillions and quadrillions of rock ages and things. Bacteria at 1, invertebrates. Then you get scorpions, snails, fish, amphibians, reptiles. Finally you get up to the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs calibrated 60. That's pretty good. World leaders in every day's headlines. I'm going to hold somebody in mind. He calibrates over 60 resist. Thank you. Been loud, huh? Yeah. Why does he calibrate lower than a dinosaur? Because the dinosaur is innocent. It eats the living because it has to, for its own survival. So the dinosaur's intention is innocent. The dinosaur's intention is merely to eat. So the intention of something below 60 then would have to be a pretty negative intention. All right, that's just an accidental thing. Here we have the reptiles, and here we have the higher dinosaurs. Here we have modern mammals, and the rise and dominance of man. So here you see how consciousness evolved protoplasmically as needful. Therefore, you don't have to feel guilty that your ego is greedy. Of course it's greedy. If it wasn't greedy, you wouldn't be here. We owe our survival to the animal within us. And I call the animal in me ego. Ego. Now, we know that ego hates anybody who cuts in on traffic and that they should die. He knows that the voters who are going to vote wrongly deserve what they get because they're wrong. Therefore, to win, it's okay to lie. It's okay to lie to win. Because he thinks survival depends on winning and getting and gaining and have power over others. Why anybody would want power over others is totally beyond me. To control other people, force them to think the way you think. And when the temptation came, because it was of an extremely high space beyond mind and thinkingness and mentalization, there was really nothing left other than the source of life itself. And there came to me, so that I understood what came to Jesus Christ, there comes to you in the silence a knowingness. There's a knowingness. It's a silent transmission. It's like what? Telepathic, I guess. Telepathic. Now that you know now that you have transcended karma, now that you know you're not answerable, that there is no God who will punish you, now that there is no consequences for all actions. All power is yours. Own it. And that was, I saw what Christ said there, because there aren't too many people at that high pass, and he turned it down. And a few others I saw were there turned it down. And happily, I saw who would want power over others. I mean, what would you want with power? And so I turned it down. Own it, and all power is yours. Own it, and all power is yours, because there is no payment. You're even beyond love. even beyond love. So you would not even be constrained by love. You could put all the poor widows out of your apartment house and double the rent. And if they starve to death, because you no longer have love for others, you're beyond love, even beyond love. Beyond love is an error, because love is one of the attributes of God. And a teaching that negates love as only a manipulation or wanting other people's approval is a very serious error. 180, serious error. Yeah. No, love is one of the qualities of divinity. So, when you look at yourself, you could say, what do I want with power over others? What a drag it would be, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be a drag, that power over others, control how they think and what they believe and all? I mean, so anyway, we see the rise and dominance of man, and we see, and we saw from that previous chart that it's only about now. Okay, so move on to the next slide. What's that?
We're almost at break.
She thinks for me, thank God. Let's go back, let's go to the next one. Okay, and very interestingly, this is one of my favorite slides. And after you've seen this slide and comprehend it, it will eliminate guilt forever. Guilt, shame, hatred, you get rid of it all now forever. Because once you understand the core of the narcissist, the ego that you were born with an animal brain, that's your hardware. Karmically, you come in with software, but that software now is to play on this hardware. You're stuck with biologic hardware of an animal, folks. All of you bark and howl. Woof, woof, woof. We own our animal. The way we disappeared is we stopped making an enemy of them, and we say, yeah, I got an animal nature. Mm-hmm. So here we see the protozoa. We see, oh, I got a pointer now. Whoa, wow. And look, this is really fun. You see how they all come up here? Crustaceans, insects, grasshoppers. Here's grasshoppers. They're not too smart, huh? But they're still around. Reptiles, snakes, alligators. I don't know. I don't understand people who play with alligators. I guess it's just macho, you know, that you can grab an alligator, get your picture taken. I'd like to see him grab a dinosaur, though. Let's see you do that one. Or a Komodo dragon, huh? And we see whales and dolphins, migratory birds, birds of prey, rhinoceros, songbirds, doves, and polar bear, water buffalo. Water buffalo are very dangerous. Water buffalo will be standing there, and then just suddenly, for no reason, he'll charge you. But he's not as dangerous as the hippopotamus. And I always tell people about the hippopotamus. Kills more humans than any other wild animal. Do not hang out with hippopotamus if you get nothing else out of this lecture. You see these idiots in canoes are hanging out with hippopotamus? Finally he says, 4 people plus a canoe go down his gullet. Just do not hang out. You see, there's people that haven't even gotten that far. Do not hang out with a hippopotamus. Do not lay down on the railroad track. You know what I mean? Just now you see the emergence of the grazers. And much to our surprise, when we calibrated these, we saw suddenly we had gone over consciousness level 200. That's the critical level in the human. And wow. Here it is, the critical level characteristic difference between animals below 200 and animals over 200. Below 200, they live at the price of the life of others. They have to eat and kill in order to live. And now at 200, suddenly you become benign, just like the human dimension. Below 200 people are dangerous. They're not safe till they're 200 and over. And the animal kingdom, you see the same phenomena. Isn't that curious? Consciousness level 200 then differentiates that which is dangerous and that which is benign. So the animal, once it reaches 200, becomes a grazer. It eats grass. It doesn't kill anybody. It doesn't tear them to pieces. And you see they'll defend themselves like an elephant. You get up to cats at 240, Family cat 245. So when you adopt a pet, just their being around you advances their consciousness 5, sometimes even 10 points. The family dog, you see, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, and here's an African gray, Alex. Alex is broccoli's ideal. I say, you keep listening, pretty soon you'll be smart as Alex. You'll be smart as Alex. Our gray is named Broccoli, so we've been calibrating broccoli every couple of months. Coco, we all know Coco. Coco is really quite benign. You're safer with Coco, a gorilla, than most of the people on the planet. Coco is at 405. Then we see the wonderment of these two pets. We see that the cat's purr calibrates at 500, and the dog's wagging tail calibrates at 500. 500 is love. So the dog's wagging tail, the cat's purr, is reflecting the energy of love. And I'll just tell the last story when we were in Toronto, and then we'll take a break. And when we were in Toronto, on the front page of the paper, the day we gave the lecture, was a story of a dog named Elvis. And Elvis, there was a man in the park who had 6,000 rounds of ammo and high-powered rifles, and he was like the famous killers that hit the newsreel, going to mow down everybody, kill everybody, and then kill himself. And he couldn't be talked out of it. He would not give up his weapons. All of a sudden, Elvis, this dog, ran across with a frisbee in his mouth and jumped up and wanted this guy to play. And this guy suddenly came to his senses. Suddenly said, "What the hell am I doing?" And dropped his rifle and surrendered to the officials, and I guess he's now in treatment. But you see, Elvis came up with an energy field of 500. So his wagging tail, his 500 hit this man's dementia, and the man became sane. Amazing. The healing power of love, which we know experientially, in therapeutics. We know that people who have dogs and cats or pets and love them live longer, have lower blood pressure, have fewer heart attacks, etc. It doesn't mean that you can't get out of here, but they'll make the waiting time more pleasant. You're sitting on the park bench waiting to leave. You can have your kitty purring in your lap, and when you leave. So when it's time to leave the planet, all I want is the cat, and the kitty, and the being surrounded by love. So, love tends to bring love to oneself. So loving people, I think, tend to have loving pets. And, all right. So we're going to take a break for how long?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, thank you so much. Where's the sound person? Okay, sound person. Sound person. Where's the sound person? We know that a 15-minute break always takes half an hour. That's why we give you 15 minutes. If we gave you half an hour, you'd take 45. So now, in all the excitement here, I forgot what today's lecture was about. But now I remembered. Today's lecture is called Witnessing and Observing. We said the human mind cannot move faster than 1/10,000th of a second. Therefore, how are you going to discover this field here? When in early life, teenager, whatever it was, I caught the mind claiming credit for saving the life of the rabbit. It wasn't the mind that did that. It wasn't the mind that did that. It was the field out of which mind arises. The witness observer. People want to know how to become enlightened. I tell them, stop identifying with content and identify with the field. Because meditation is something that tends to be somewhat artificial It's not what you do in everyday life. A lot of people go someplace and pay money and learn it and spend 3 weeks learning it. And you're very enthused about meditation. So you do it, I did it myself for an hour in the morning, an hour at night for many years. And then what happens is your life gets to be too busy. And so now you do it for half an hour, and then you skip Monday morning, and then Thursday night you forget it. And within 6 months you've given up meditation. And then you go to a retreat, you do it again for a week, and then... So it's not something that you are. It's something, in addition, compartmentalized. I think I'll go and meditate now. Means you got to leave everything, turn off the TV, tell the dog go lay down. You got to go to some special place, get a special mat, special perfume, incense, all kinds of woo-woo images of divine figures. You go into this state. Well, yeah. And then when you stand up and walk around, you're right back to where you were. All right. Consciousness is advanced by identifying with the field, not with the content of the field, but with the field itself. That's the witness observer, see? The mind is literal and linear, and it's good for figuring out what all the controls are in the car, We have a new Chevy, and it's got 100 controls. 100 controls. At my age, that's a nightmare. Where's the on, off? Brake. I don't want the radio CDs and the CBDs playing when I'm driving. I would have run over the rabbit, you know what I mean? When you drive, you trust the field, don't you? You don't just trust what you're looking at, because this car is just coming in from this side. When you drive, you tend to spread your consciousness, your awareness to the field, or you better, or you wouldn't be here today. No, you're aware of the totality. A meditative lifestyle, then, is one in which you become aligned with the field rather than the content of the field. And we'll get to a diagram about that later. You get to be the field. Why? Because the field and the observer do not move within time. The mind has to move from the particular to the particular to the particular. It's confined to the linear. So the mind goes from this word to this picture in the paper to this TV thing. So the mind can only can't move any faster than 1/10,000th of a second. Flicks from this to this. The field doesn't move from anything to anything. If you become one with the field automatically notices that the brake went on before. The mind took credit. It was the witness observer that discerned that. So the witness observer is faster than 1/10,000th of a second because it is not on and off. It doesn't move from this to that. It's the totality of the field. It's the field that sees all three fish rise out of the sea at once. If I look at this fish, and then this fish, and then this fish, you can't do it, right? If you're one with the field, you see all three fish are rising spontaneously of their own. It's very obvious. I mean, you don't have to attend lectures. To remind you what a flying fish knows. It just is what it is. It doesn't think, oh, I decided to leap out of the sea. Its nature did that for it. So the witness observer, and we'll get to a diagram that explains that, is the field. So I tend to emphasize contemplation as a spiritual style. to be aware of the totality of the field. I mean, the current political thing is, it isn't what this one says and what this one says, that's what they all focus on. It's more the intention of the field. What's the intention of the field? What's the intention of the people involved? What's the overall field that they're creating? And so then you try to decide which field is the best for the country. You don't hear anybody on TV being interviewed saying they're going to do what's best for the country. So they're going to do what's best for us truck drivers or us plumbers or us whatever. Instead of the field. You see, when you ask what in the name of the highest good, so you would ask if you want to find out how to vote. In the name of the highest good, I would be best serving the highest good to select this person or that person, whatever appeals to you. Okay. All right, so we'll go back to the slides. We got as far as the dog's wagging tail and Elvis. We're going to go on to the next one. So you see, the animal now you're born with, that's your physiology. And then on top of this animal brain evolves the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex does not replace the animal brain. It's an add-on. Now you have the great difficulty of being a human being. As I say, if I was St. Peter, I say, where you been? Planet Earth? You've been a human being? Yes. Pass. Why? Because you're stuck with an animal brain and a prefrontal cortex with spiritual awareness, honesty, integrity, answerability, and such things. And now you've got a setup for conflict. How to resolve the conflict then, traditionally has been done the downside, the Gothic side of traditional religion has been sin and guilt and penance, etc. Ashcloth, sackcloth and ashes. Consequently, few people have become enlightened in history. It's an extreme rarity. Because God is not at the bottom of the chart of the calibrated level of consciousness, God is at the top. Joy, happiness, forgiveness. So the first thing we learn is that God is not at the bottom of the chart, God is at the top of the chart. Joy, forgiveness, love. What to do with the downside then? If you vilify it, you set up a duality in which the ego becomes your enemy. Your animal nature now becomes your enemy. And you have to do penance and say the rosary. Because it gets angry and it's selfish, etc. The way to eliminate a thing is to not resist it and to adopt it. You adopt it. My ego's name is ego. Ego. And I accept that ego is what it is because it's my animal inheritance. Instead of vilifying it, I said, of course you're selfish. Of course you want to win. Of course people in traffic deserve to die. Yes. And the people who vote wrongly, we know who they are, deserve what they get, don't they? So you just assume that the ego is that way and that everybody's ego is that way. Okay. What happened to the... Oh, so you finally have a prefrontal cortex. So as consciousness evolves, it evolves from the emotions of the negative emotions, then it evolves to more positive emotions. I mean, at the very bottom, it's pure animal emotion. And then it evolves from negative emotions, shame, guilt, hatred, etc., to positive emotions, enthusiasm, commitment, reliability, the traditional virtues of traditional America. And eventually, the prefrontal cortex evolves to the point where it can think. Most people think they can think, but that's an illusion. They're not thinking. They think they're thinking. You can't really think until you get to consciousness level 400, which excludes most voters. Yeah. Logic and reason arose late in the game. It really hasn't made much progress since about 350 BC. In 350 BC, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, pretty much, of course, later refined by Kant and others, but pretty much it was set, the logic, the difference between rhetoric and logic, and the paradigm of reality that dominates our current society. American society calibrates at 421. 400 is the level of the intellect, reason, the prefrontal cortex, education, college. So America calibrates higher than any country in the world right now at 421. So we celebrate inventiveness, creativeness, intelligence, going to college, learning, reading, becoming educated, staying up with current events, being informed. So we emphasize intelligence. And out of it has come a great society, a great society. Capacity to reason and to think. So this is the world I grew up in childhood. Other people were playing stickball and wrestling and all kinds of things, playing football and all kinds of dangerous games. They didn't allow me on the football field. The coach said, I don't want you on the football field because your bones are just going to get crunched. And so he wouldn't approve me for anything. So the worst day for me was field day, when there was no classes and everybody climbed ropes and did somersaults and other nightmarish things, because I was into the great books of the Western world, which were assembled by Mortimer Adler at the University of Chicago in the 50s. These are the greatest thinkers the world has ever seen. These are the people that set up the paradigm of America as it stands today, the Constitution of the United States, which calibrates at 710, the highest of any in the world. 710, extremely brilliant. What's so terrific about the United States Constitution? It says, our equality arises by virtue of the divinity of our Creator. The Americans' political rights arise out of the fact that out of the Creator arose the rights of man, not by the vote, not by secularism, not by one army winning over another, but by virtue of the divinity of our source. That is what gives us freedom of religion and freedom from religion. 710, Constitution of the United States. People that want to meddle with it, when you calibrate them, are usually less than 200. Change the Constitution of the United States, you calibrate that energy of that person, you usually find it's less than 200, because the sheer arrogance of it is alone is enough to put you below 200. Anyway, here you got the greatest minds. So while everybody else is playing stickball and other violent games, sticking their fingers in each other's eyes and things, I was sitting with a big book in front of me, and I wore very thick glasses, trifocals and all. So here's the skinny ectomorph, a bookworm, and the mesomorphs are out there whacking into each other. I could never really get the pleasure of that. What is the pleasure of wrestling? This guy's eyes balls are, and you're pulling his. I could never get what is the kick out of that. You know what I'm saying? And I was fascinated with Aristotle and Plato and the aphorisms of Marcus Aurelius and things like that. So you see, here's in the 400s, Thomas Aquinas and Marcus Aurelius, Sir Francis Bacon, Berkeley. All the great names of history, Chaucer, Darwin at 450. So here you see the Newtonian paradigm. Where's Sir Isaac Newton? I think he's on here too, isn't he? You see the idea of causality. Now the problem with the human mind, the reason it can't tell truth from falsehood, was delineated quite clearly by Descartes. The problem with the human mind is its dualistic nature. It thinks that what res interna, res cogitans. It thinks that what it thinks is what is out there. It confuses res interna with res externa. The reality of thinking this with the reality of nature and the way the universe is. If you follow what I'm saying, you will see that the concept of causality is res interna, res cogitans. It's a thinkingness. That there is a this causing a that is a dualistic perception on the part of the mind. It now projects it into the world and thinks causality is out there. In thinking that, for one thing, when it comes to causality, it's violating a basic principle of logic itself. Because a thing follows another, it doesn't mean it's caused by that which preceded it. That's the great illusion, which science itself falls into. So science is limited to the paradigm of about 450 to 460, even quantum mechanics. To go beyond duality, you then have to go into a different paradigm. Within the Newtonian paradigm, you're stuck with causality. If you're stuck with causality to a spiritual student, you're then stuck with the thought that there is a personal, separate I causing a that. There's a personal I. It's answerable, punishable, limited. And it causes that. It decides that. There's a separate personal self with a small s that is separate for the infinite oneness. If you constantly identify with the field, you will catch, the witness observer will see that everything is happening spontaneously. We saw it happen spontaneously this morning. This is where things say, things happen spontaneously as a result of intention. It came out of the audience, didn't it?